My grandma deeded money in her will. So I don't know the full story, but I do know the gist of it. My grandma raised her kids with love. She practically spoiled them, and she raised her grandkids too, me and my two sisters. Two of them, my uncle and my dad, became addicts, and the last, my aunt, became estranged. I've got tons of relatives, so I don't know if I've ever met her. If I have, I don't remember her face or name, so let's call her Little Miss J. J left without looking back and constantly asked my grandmother for money. She hardly repaid Grandma, which was a big mistake because, surprise, surprise, my grandma was on top of every penny that she had. She was the best I've ever seen when it came to handling funds. But 2 years ago, my grandma was diagnosed with cancer. She worked her butt off her whole life, was the strongest woman on the planet, and nobody got by without paying her their dues. Eventually, my grandma dies. In her will, she gives money to my grandpa, my dad, my uncle, me, and my sisters. Everyone in her family. But when it comes to Jay, she says, "You still owe me $14. I do not know if she actually somehow deeded Jay $14 in a will, or just put it in there as a little slap in the face. All Jay was worried about when Grandma died was the money, and she got none of it. I can't be prouder to have a grandma that wouldn't leave this world without the last laugh. I guess I forgot to include it. Jay is also a drug addict. That's why she needed my grandmother's money constantly. My grandmother was a great woman, and a great mother to me. She raised me well, because people want to blame my grandmother. She raised 3 kids that were hers and 3 kids that weren't. The kids that were hers turned into drug addicts. The 3 kids that weren't turned into people who could handle their emotions and found therapy for themselves. I think it was a generational problem rather than the bad parenting she's being accused of. She was the kindest woman I'd ever met, but also the strongest. All 3 of us are getting therapy for things that aren't related to my grandmother. My uncle, my dad, and my aunt are not. Do we not think that maybe the generational differences of people who were often not given needed resources and people with the technology to find needed resources might be a factor in how they handle their mental illnesses? I should have expected the Reddit community, notorious for being snobby and pompous, would react like this, but I still feel the need to clarify. None of you know my life simply from the paragraphs written here. I have a long history, and the memories of my grandmother are the only good ones I have. None of the drug addicts in my family, not my mom, not my dad, not my other grandma, not the aunt I do know, not my uncle, not one member of my family has spoken ill about how my grandmother treated her kids. In fact, they've spoken highly of her parenting. It will be a cold day in hell when I let chronically online know-it-alls attempt to change my memory of my grandmother into something she was not. She was an honorable woman, and she is not responsible for the mistakes her children made when faced with an opioid crisis. I know that my dad was long out of the house before he got hooked on drugs, and he is now diagnosed with anxiety. If you'd like to continue blaming my grandma, I'd love to see how you believe she affected the other half of my family who is the same way. A leading cause of addiction is genetics and mental and emotional disorders. Anxiety can be an inherited condition that probably went untreated, as my grandmother was also a very anxious person. What I know is, my grandmother did not work her ass off to be a good person, just for a bunch of self-important prigs to insult her. Bottom line, you don't know my life, I do. This was a funny story because everyone in the family knows Jay is an asshole. Was the petty revenge justified? Comment below and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more.